appointed hour. Call to order the New Bern Historic Preservation Commission. Sir, could we have a roll call?
Certainly. Ruth Cox.
Present.
Trip Urey.
Here.
Kristen Evans.
Here.
Ellen Sheridan.
Here.
Peggy Broadway.
Here.
George Brake.
Here.
Joe Klotz.
Here.
Annette Stone.
Here.
And Jim Bisbee is excused.
Okay. So I'm going to go to the next item, and then we have a special item. So can I call for a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we will move on to the next item, and the next item on our agenda is this certificate of appreciation here. So Christian, if you will come up here.
Okay.
We're stepping up our game.
We are stepping up our game. Yeah, we're going to step up our game. Yes. Christian is going to leave us, unfortunately, and we'd like to give her this little bit of our appreciation. We'd like to give are we there now?
Now stand on a chair or something.
We'll be
There you go.
when we
All
come
right.
back to life.
Are we good now?
Yes.
We're good now. The certificate of appreciation for all the work she's done. I certainly appreciate the work she did with me with getting this award system together and looking up stuff and us working together on that.
You call me if you need me.
I will. We call her back. And she might going to be on one of the committees here just as a community person. So there's a committee she has some interest in. So she won't be totally leaving us. She will still be here some. So we appreciate everything that you've done for us.
And it's been a privilege to work with all of you and serving the community with the integrity for the district, for the Hustle District. And I thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see what else we got to do. We don't have that. So let me do the introduction here. The historic preservation to our one person that we have. How many times have you heard this?
Many. I'll
Could you
hear it
repeat
again.
it to me?
Hundreds.
The Historic Preservation Commission is a public commission appointed by the City of New Bern Board of Aldermen. It is responsible for preserving and safeguarding New Bern's locally designated historic districts, downtown and Riverside, based upon U.S. Department of Interior standards, state statutes, city ordinances, and New Bern's historic guidelines. Two of the major tasks of the HPC include approving applications for a certificate of appropriateness and preventing demolition of historic structures due to neglect. The HPC holds a quasi-judicial hearing on an application for a certificate of appropriateness. The Commission hears sworn testimony and evidence provided by the applicant, by parties who receive notice of the hearing, and by others who can justify that they have relevant evidence and are directly affected by the application. The Commission cannot consider comments based on personal likes or dislikes, hearsay, or personal opinion that cannot be directly related to specific historic guidelines. Likewise, Commissioners shall refrain from stating personal opinion, personal likes, or dislikes, or hearsay during a hearing. The Commission's decision on an application is based solely on testimony and evidence presented at a hearing that directly relates to historic guidelines. Can we swear in our one person who is here tonight?
She's a trooper.
Do you swear to tell the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
And you've already signed the
Yeah.
signage.
So our process will go as this. The HPC administrator provides an overview of the application. The applicant or their representative presents the application. proponents and opponents who received notice of the hearing can present evidence. Rebuttal is allowed by the applicant and by proponents and opponents who received notice. Others who can justify that they have relevant information and will be directly affected can present evidence. The HPC administrator presents the staff's findings and recommendations. The applicant or their representative has an opportunity to make final comments on their application. Commissioners discuss the evidence and may ask for clarification from the applicant or their presenters. The motion is discussed by the commissioners. The chairman calls for a vote on the motion by the commission. A COA can be approved with conditions, or denied. And we have one applicant tonight as the Bern Street application has been withdrawn.
That's correct. The 311 Bern Street applicant sent me this afternoon written notification that they are withdrawing the application.
Okay, so we have 808 East Front Street.
Okay. So we can skip through that one. All right. 808 East Front Street is also Lot 5 at River Station. The applicant is River Station Development Corporation, and the applicant's authorized representative is Go Architectural Design, PLLC. You can see here's the rest. The application is fully completed, including the back side and the signature and date. And the authorization is actually on page following these drawings. There. So you can see before, now it includes 808 and has been signed and notarized. All right. So now we'll go back to the drawings. So we're talking about Lot 5, which is this lot here, which is the middle of the row, along with that has its edge facing the river and the green space between the river and the alleyway in the back. And this along here is East Front Street. And the other black buildings represent the other buildings that have already been approved. And this is a sketch elevation. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the applicants provided these photographs of the site. So this is the intersection of Queen and East Front Street here. And then the driveway goes around this corner here. And then also this is a view down Queen Street towards the river, and East Front Street is to the left. The lot is actually off picture here on the left. So this gives you the context. And then, as I pointed out up here, the driveway continues towards the river and then takes a left-hand turn. That's what this area here is. After you've made the left-hand turn, you see that same puddle here, but now looking back up Queen Street. This area is the first lot that was approved some months ago for a new house there. And the lot that we're going to be discussing is in the middle of this open area here. So there's a site plan. I believe this might be our only site plan, I'm not sure. But I should also mention this project has been previously approved. So what we're discussing and approving again tonight are some revisions that have been made to the structure. So one of the revisions on the site plan is the inclusion of a new fence around the front yard here. And we'll see some elevations drawings of what that entails, but just so you have an idea, it starts a little bit behind the front facade on the left side, follows the property line, has a gate in front of the front steps, and then comes back around to the other side and finishes on the right-hand side behind, a little bit
That was
behind.
approved before,
What was?
previously, yeah.
All right then, never mind.
I mean, but it's the whole thing's new again, so, you know.
Okay. And just to reiterate then, I guess, we have a concrete driveway out the back that does feed out to the alleyway along the back side. One change here is the size and scale of the columns on the corner and against the building. We'll see that in a minute as well. So we can come back to this if there are any other questions about any of the site plan issues. So this is just the first floor plan. And we can, again, refer to that if necessary. Second floor plan, I'll move this over. You can see there is a covered porch on the second floor, or the main living area. And then the third floor also has a covered porch out the back and one out the front. So there you see the left is the elevation, quite a bit larger here for you. I just mentioned the upstairs third floor porch or balcony. And then I think, is the roof configuration the same as the last time?
The overall shape, the front porch area is the same. The detailing up in the gable is a bit different. We kind of redid that with some brackets and, you know, left it with a shake siding. The configuration of that front roof is the same. It just is conformed to that new design. So it's got board and batten, it's got some brackets, it's got, it's just a little bit more craftsman-y style than before. And that front porch area there is, the ceiling of that porch is up at the bracket line. So you kind of follow it up.
So there would be a beam kind of out towards the front of the porch near the rake boards, and then these brackets are in front of that beam, and then this paneling is that also where the brackets are located?
That's beadboard in that, the gable end of that shape there.
Board and batten?
Board and batten.
Yeah.
And then, what we did was we increased the side height of it, where before we had, we were trying to keep the overall height down, but it's still within the land use ordinance, and the owner wanted to have a full height wall on that third floor and not have a half.
Right, so inside the room, is this the ceiling height, the dash line?
Yeah.
So inside these, the walls go right to the walls go to the ceiling, and then the ceiling is either flat or then angled up from there.
Yeah, I think we've got that at 8, and then it'll vault up a little bit from there on the
Some vaulting.
inside. Yeah.
But at least you have the 8-foot walls, whereas before it was more like 6 feet or 5
I
feet
think it
walls.
was like 2 or 3.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so.
Wasn't it a attic before?
That's what I mean, yeah, so we had the side wall at 2 feet, and then,
That trick never works.
well, I thought it worked.
But I mean, it just.
But, they wanted a full floor. Okay, I mean, I like the way it turned out, and then on the back, we doubled up the columns to just give it some more heft, and just to make it a bit beefier than it was.
Okay. Then going to the other two elevations, so this would be the other side around. And on this side now you have more windows than you had before, because before this roof line was about halfway down.
And we
the wall.
had 2 dormers on either side.
Right. back as a full, well, I think you had a full height porch up there before.
Not exactly. So now it is full height.
So, and then these are the details that were there before regarding the railing, the iron railing for the front steps and the trim around the windows. The interior elevations. This is your fence that we're talking about. And this shows a dimension of 4 feet from the ground to the peaks of the spears hanging out, what that's called, as well as the posts. And then it's these are 3-inch intervals here. And then the trash corral, which is where the mechanical units will sit on top of. All of this is made of wood. I don't know if you want to see the details at all. It's the same as before, I believe. And I just want to point out at this point, the drawings indicate that these pickets, as she calls them, are all painted, but all of the wood has to be painted or opaque stained. So I think that'll end up being either a condition or a violation if it's not done. So then we already discussed that. Then this is the zoning and inspections from where the, let's see, oh, sorry, yes, the zoning administrator said it meets the zoning code, and the building inspector said this project will need a building permit, surprisingly. And so we're ready with our findings and recommendations whenever you are.
Anything else you want to add to what he has presented?
No.
All right, do we have any conflict of interest from anyone on this project? We've seen it before. Are there any issues on the applicant's completeness?
Say that again, Ruth?
Is there any issues on the application's completeness?
No.
There is no one else here except who you see in the meeting. So there's no proponents, there's no opponents, there's no city, state, or government body, anybody here. And ma'am, you don't have anything else you'd like to add?
No.
So, let's have your findings and recommendations.
Sure. All right. All right, so this is for the Riverside Development Corporation and Go Architectural Designs project for 808 East Front Street. It's a vacant lot, and so there is no historic description. And the project is to include construction of a new infill house. So staff submits the following historic district guidelines are appropriate to this application. For development pattern 2.1.1 through 2.1.3. For design principles 3.1.1 through 3.1.5. For infill construction 3.4.1 through 3.4.4. For foundations 4.1.3 and 4.1.4. Walls, trim, and ornamentation 4.2.4. Windows, doors, and openings 4.3.3. For entrances 4.4.4. For roofs, 4.5.4. For decks and patios, 4.6.2. For masonry, 5.1.3, 5, and 6. For metals, 5.3.3 and 5.3.4. For paint, 5.4.2, 4, 3, 4, and 6. The statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: 1, the project is located in the narrow stitch development pattern. 2, the proposal is an infill project. 3, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. 4, the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. And 5, the project is not incongruous with the guidelines. So staff recommends the commission approve this application for construction of a new infill house.
Okay. Members,
Yes.
comments, questions?
Yeah, question. I do not recall our approving a fence like that in the primary area in that development. Since that development is what, how do you label it? Thick?
Out narrow.
Narrow stitch.
Yes. So every fence that goes in, what if you had a wooden slat fence here, a metal fence here, a brick? It's going to look really, really choppy. And have we dealt with that? It's almost a part of landscaping, but I wonder if we dealt with the fence part, because they're putting this iron fence in the primary area. I don't
Can you show
recall
us that again?
approving
You're talking
that.
about?
It's allowed by the guidelines.
Plant, you mean?
Are you
plan
speaking
view
about
or
recovering-
elevation?
Elevation view, where they want to put this, so we understand what
Iron railings.
your
And these houses are what, 5 feet apart?
Yes, they are.
And if you're going to have a different type of fence,
They're 10 feet apart.
Well, regardless, I mean,
Yeah.
in my mind, it's no different than having neighbors with 2 different fence materials.
Yeah.
the biggest problem here, Tripp, is that they can't hide it with landscaping. We can't. In the city, we have trees and bushes and tall plants, and they can't seem to do that there for
They
some
will
reason.
eventually have trees, there's street trees there, and there eventually will be, I mean, they're growing, so they will have street trees.
There are houses just as close along East Front Street in the next, not the next block down, but the block after that are that close together. I mean, honestly, that fence, we could take it out. That was when this project had an owner, they wanted that specifically, and I just left it in there in case somebody wanted to keep it. If you feel strongly about it, we can take it out of the application.
But you're saying it's already been approved in that?
I've already brought this project back at least twice, and that was approved. I was just trying to pull up the application, the previous one. I don't know if you've got it, but.
Was the house shake when that fence was approved?
It previously was not
No.
shake.
Okay, now, Peggy is
Yeah.
right, I'm confused. So, okay, now it all makes more
But that all
sense to me.
said, we don't have any standards anywhere for,
Unified fencing.
yeah.
Should we have?
Why?
Well, that would be another discussion at another time.
Yeah.
My question about the fencing, just to go back and beat a dead horse, is I don't think we can approve the height of any fence. We just went through design review, a discussion about the height of a fence, and we said that our guideline was inarticulate, and we have yet to revise the guideline, which to me means that going forward, we really can't approve any fence based on its height at this point in time, because we have to revise the guideline.
Well, that's not germane to this particular
No.
discussion.
I'm comfortable if you want to make, if you want to take that fence out of this project.
Make it a condition to come back at another time.
Yes.
That would be good, Sarah. It would give us time to.
It's honestly, I should have taken it out, and I didn't, and it was a request from the previous owner. And
So no, this has
I
a new
drew it and I
owner?
left it in there. It had an owner at one point, but they bought a house on Johnson Street.
Oh, gee, I'm sorry to hear that.
Didn't want to wait. All
So
good.
that just would be a condition of approval that the fence is not included. It will come back at another time
Yeah.
with a different or a new approval for the
Yeah,
fence.
and the owner of this development has rules for the development anyway, and fence discussion has been a big part of that because they understand that issue.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't been resolved yet, but absolutely that is an issue, that they want to make it look uniform.
I think you should take it out for the time being.
Absolutely, that's not a problem.
So you would withdraw, let's see,
Or just, you can make it a condition that it,
Whoever makes the motion,
Move it on, change
Make it a
some
condition.
columns. Well, that's not even in this, there's only fence mentioned in here at all anyway. Well, increase the focus on remove the roof dormers, change some. Okay. So is the fence mentioned in the application? It's not mentioned here.
I don't see it.
Is the fence in the application?
Well, it's
itself?
in, yes, it's on the drawings.
which are part of the application.
Yeah.
But it's written into the application?
You mean verbally?
Yes. Because it's not here, that's why I'm asking.
Sarah says it's part of the original approval, and this is not a change necessarily.
Yes,
But
but,
if the whole thing's coming back,
yeah, but it should
I
be
mean,
in
that's
here.
where I,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah, but it should be, still should be in
So I
here.
guess my question, is this a new application or a change to a previously approved COA?
I think you said it was a new application, but,
Me,
I
I
don't.
take out my, you're bringing us something new about this, not that it's a new application. This is being presented as changes to an approved COA,
That's what it says. in
is
there.
how it's been presented.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's been approved.
Right, so it's been approved. And my question is, was that fence and what was approved? Because it's not in this, right?
It's not in, it's
It's
not
not-
written,
it's
not
not-
written there, no, but you don't write absolutely.
Okay, so
It
it's,
doesn't talk about the trash enclosure
okay.
either.
So if you take the pictures of the fence out, then we're okay. Is that
Because
right?
I have the approval here, but I can't,
And I can get it and bring it to the screen if you'd like, but it's gonna take 5, 10 minutes.
we're fine just taking it out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it doesn't, we can absolutely bring it back if somebody.
So whoever asked for this to the approval here,
The motion,
the motion for it, you need to add that the fence is being removed from the application.
With the consent of the applicant.
With the, yeah.
anything else?
So did we ever answer the question? Is this an amendment to a previously issued COA?
Well, that is how, I'm just looking at it here, that's what
That's
you
what I
want
was
to do.
assuming,
That's
yes,
what- that's what-
because it's previously approved, the entire thing.
It only matters in terms of how we handle the motion.
Yeah,
Right.
because it was approved in January.
Okay, so whoever makes the motion has to take out the fence. Does anybody else have any
Well, so
questions?
what Tripp is alluding to, though, is it's not just not included in this, it would be revoking essentially the approval for the fence.
It,
Well, except that
Oh.
the applicant
it actually,
withdrew that part of the application.
it is included, actually. It's included in my January submittal with the fence, but the design of the house was different. I mean, if you want to do a condition that just says, you know, any fence approval will come back for the HPC. They're, you know, I'm 95% sure they won't put this fence in right, you know, as part of the initial build, so.
So will that take care of it if we put in there that either that the fence is not included in this, that the fence
Well,
is, taking the fence out is part of this
right,
revision?
I think Tripp corrected me in that the applicant is requesting the fence to be removed from this application.
Right.
That's fine. I mean, it was approved in the January meeting, but
Right.
it doesn't.
But it's going to be one of your changes here,
That's fine, yeah,
okay? Can you accept that?
I accept
And
that.
that it will be one of your changes?
That removing the fence will be one of
Yes.
the changes, yes, that can be.
So whoever's going to make the motion, that's going to be part of one of the changes. Okay, removing this fence, okay. We're all set on that. Anybody unsettled about what we're doing? Okay, so can I have a motion from someone? And include removing the fence?
can do it. I move to find the amendment to the certificate of appropriateness for 808 East Front Street to be congruous and/or not incongruous. So congruous with historic districts, with New Bern's Code of Ordinance Sections 15.411-15.429 and New Bern's Historic District Guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Is it okay if we just say insert staff's recommendations? No, you wouldn't
You
read them all.
have to list them.
All right,
List the
yep,
numbers.
Sure. Okay, so, based on guidelines, development pattern 2.1.1 through 3, design principles 3.1.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, infill construction 3.4.1, 2, 3, and 4, foundations 4.1.3 and 4, walls, trim, and ornamentation 4.2.4, windows, doors, and openings 4.3.3, entrances 4.4.4, roofs 4.5.4, decks 4.6.2, masonry 5.1.3, 5 and 6, metals 5.3 and 4, paint 5.42, 3, 4, and 6. Statement of reasons based on the information contained in the application. The project is located in the narrow stitch development pattern. The proposal is an infill project. The proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. And the zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. This project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Okay. And a condition is that the original approval of the fence, the applicant is withdrawn, and that they will come back at a later time with any new fence approval.
Okay, are we all clear on this?
Yes,
I see
ma'am.
everybody's shaking their head.
Second.
Okay, all right, everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, hearing none. Is there a second?
Second.
Joe.
Oh, that just second, okay. All right. So we finished with that part. So let us, can I have a motion to issue a COA?
No,
It's already-
it's an amendment.
Oh, it's an amendment, all right. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sarah, before you leave,
Yeah.
under old business,
Oh,
I'd like to raise a question. Guys, are they going to widen that road behind this development?
Pat Mitchell owns that property. I
Okay.
don't know.
My question is, and I've asked this before, when you look at the house and you're going down Glen Burnie, Queen, and the house on the left, and there's even with that driveway, which is bigger, it looks like he's going to have a difficult turning radius getting into his garage. And then on the riverside, the road is even smaller.
We've laid out turning radiuses
Good.
on there.
Good.
Believe me.
Thank you
It's been an
kindly.
issue, but we have, yeah. I understand it's tight and it is, yes, but, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
So my question is, do we even need statements of reason for amendment to the COA? I mean, it's okay to have them, but
I would do them out of an abundance of caution. What can I say?
I would do them out of an abundance of caution. It doesn't cost you anything to do.
More is better.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the, and I see where we want to put this in the agenda tonight, which Joe brought up. One of the things that we need to decide on, which we discussed at our last meeting, was what is the base from whence a fence height is going to be measured.
Can we do that under,
I was just saying, where do you want to put
Oh.
that under?
can we do that under other items F or commissioners' comments?
Yes, we can, if you'd like to do it. So 4 is old business, and there seems to be none for
We
that.
just did that. Or
Uh,
Peggy just brought up that item as old business.
Oh, okay, that item is on this, okay. There are no general public present in our meeting. So the next item is the PD,
New
B
business.
work group.
Yep. So, for the Prevention of Demolition by Neglect work group, one of our members is resigning, and that's Christian Evans. As a Historic Preservation Commission member. However, she would like to remain serving on the work group as a non-Historic Preservation Commission member, essentially as a member of the public. But of course, she has the experience and background already accumulated to serve on that work group. Now, we do not have, we don't have any other non-HPC members on that work group yet. But we do have another work group, the Historic Property Owners Support Work Group, that does have quite a few non-HPC members on that. So we just wanted to make sure, since when the HIP, the HIP work group was established, it was known and understood at the get-go that there would be non-HPC members on that one. However, when we formed the PDBN work group many moons ago, years, I'm sure, it was probably never anticipated that a non-HPC member would be interested, let alone allowed to serve. So I feel like it's necessary to at least formalize it if you choose to have a non-HPC member serve on that work group.
I have a question. What does that work group do?
So,
I understand
yes.
the title.
Yes, so primarily they work through many of the different issues related to any demolition by neglect cases. Recently we've been following and discussing the several items that are on the agenda for this evening. They've also been helping the administrator, i.e. myself, to work through the the tracking sheet, as I call it, for all the various cases that seem to have been placed on the demolition by neglect list, or at least have had complaints filed, and so to track where they are in their current status. When I arrived here, it was not that clear where most of those were, or even what was on the list, or what was not on the list. So we're working through all the various files that are both in the Historic Preservation Administrator's office, as well as in the Chief Building Inspector's office. And the reason for that, if you don't already know, is that because once the case gets serious, then the Chief Building Inspector is brought into the process as well. So those are the two main things at the moment. We also have been, we've had a proposal to maybe talk about streamlining the process a little bit as well, but we seem to have bigger fish to fry, or more urgent things, I guess is maybe the better way to put it, to address, and that takes all of our time at the moment. And we do meet twice a month.
And that would have been shocking to find how many cases are just dropped. You know, it's not completed. And
Peggy's
through
on.
history, we would love to have you. Love to
So
have you on
you mean
that.
drop just because at some, you never end up levying fines or anything just because of.
Oftentimes it's forgotten because there's been staff turnover both at the historic preservation side and on the building inspection side.
Right.
And also workloads have gotten in the way. Hurricanes have happened,
That seems to
Pandemics.
delay a lot of other things, so.
And pandemic.
What?
Well,
And
okay.
And
COVID-19.
pandemic, yeah.
My basic observation is that the work group
Joe's also on the work group.
doesn't have official standing to make binding decisions.
Mhm.
Now, it can make recommendations to this board,
Yes.
Mhm.
which can make binding decisions, but it doesn't have that kind of legal position. And that being the case, I don't see any reason why a non-HPC member can't be a member of a work group.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the information that they process is not
Mhm.
information that has any any standing.
No, yeah.
Madam Chair, in the spirit of being helpful, there is no legal prohibition against a member of the public or a citizen participating in a work group.
Furthermore, if I'm not mistaken, it's your discretion on who gets on the committee to start with. So, in other words, if you want outside consultants, whether they be the public or if we hire somebody,
Right,
you know,
okay.
it's up to the chair to determine
Okay.
whether
So-
that's permissible.
Right. So the chair gets to determine, and we've also heard that there's nothing legally preventing a non-member being on the work group. So I guess, so if we say, so do we make a motion that that be what we accept, or I just get to decide?
I think
Well,
you just
person
get
by
to
person?
declare
Yeah,
You
so
who the assignments
just,
are.
just declare.
Okay, so I declare that you can be on the PDBN work group.
Thank you.
Is that what you'd like to do?
Yes, ma'am. I will.
Okay, all right, so if you could add her to that, even though she's not on this big one.
you
so
just
she,
moved to item B, by the way.
Did I? So
So
that,
item A is that the chair has the authority to choose whomever or whatever
Committee assignments.
may
Work groups.
serve for the work groups.
right, and that there's nothing legally binding that would prevent that from happening from our legal consultant
Right. Okay, so now B,
to be.
all right, would you let, you've already appointed Ms. Evans to the PDBN work group. We are also soon losing another member from our HIP work group. So we could use someone to
What member are
actually,
you losing from there?
George.
Oh, we're losing George, okay.
I'll
So
be glad to stay on that work group.
you would like to stay on that one
Okay,
too?
so George, you would like to stay on that group?
Good.
So I appoint George
Okay.
to the HIP, Owner Support Work Group.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, may I ask about the preservation of awards?
Work group? Well, that work group is done its duty to this
Okay.
point in time.
Okay.
We can appoint her to the group, to that group as well, to keep her on there
Yes.
until it gets officially approved by the alderman. Do we know where we are in that process of it being approved?
So, yes, we can discuss that after the meeting.
After the meeting? Okay, we'll discuss that after. the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, you're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like to serve on any of the various work groups? You might as well appoint them this evening if they so desire, or would like to switch from one to another. Nope.
Seeing none, we will move on to number 7A, which is reports on COAs issued, majors and amendments, and minor and amendments.
Correct. And this is my numbered them because I found myself counting how many there were.
Okay. And a lot of these things get taken care of just between meetings by email with Matt and myself and with my trusted colleagues here about what things can be minors and what can we do. So, but these are the things that you have approved already.
Yes.
Okay?
Since the last meeting,
Okay. Anybody, any questions about any of these?
the last regular meeting.
Seeing none, we will go to B, to report on the COA extensions issued since the prior regular meeting, and that's none. 221 East Front Street, we had a meeting about that Monday? Monday at noon?
Friday.
Friday.
Yeah.
Friday. Oh, sorry, yes, Friday morning. We had a meeting with the gentleman that owns the house. Which one of the two of you want to give a report?
Oh, we can give a report. So, yeah, essentially, we met with the new property owner and talked a little bit about sequencing of work, as well as council will assist in assigning a schedule to that work sequence. And also, we will be hearing from the applicant at the July design review to introduce himself, as well as maybe answer some of the questions in terms of sequencing and things like that, so that we all have a chance to get familiar. And then today's Wednesday. Yesterday, I participated in an interior observation of progress on moving Miss Jessie out. And, despite some hardships, she is making pretty good progress, and I'd say the third floor, what would be the attic space, it's finished, but it's empty, and the second floor is empty given Jessie's standards, and the first floor needs some work. But it's made a tremendous difference. We assessed windows and sashes in particular, and they are all remarkably intact.
Good.
And so we talked a little bit about what type of work might be involved to get those up to par, and then. But I think what you will hear at design review is a focus on masonry work on the parapets, as well as some roofing work to get the building weather tight. Anything beyond that will be gravy, so to speak, in terms of moving things down the road.
So how many dumpsters have left that house now?
I'm going to say,
He said 3.
okay,
He said 3 had left.
but they're the large, long ones.
And there's a nice
Jeez
fan still
Louise.
sitting there in the side of the house,
Yeah,
right?
that's gonna be good.
Well,
He's gonna
hopefully
move
that's going to relocate
Oh, good.
somewhat
that. He's gonna
soon,
move
although
that.
I'm not going to
And
make
Tripp,
any
are you
promises.
satisfied that the rain is out now, they've got the roof and
No,
everything?
no, they have work to do, but, Jessie's still more or less occupying the building.
Okay.
And so,
You get social services involved or something.
yeah, that's
Social
that.
services has very, very limited power.
Mhm.
And,
People who are competent technically.
yeah, and also that's the applicant's problem as far as I'm concerned. And so, they seem to be making progress.
And she has asked, it said she'll be out by June the 21st, what she has
That
said.
maybe-
That was, January 21st, so.
Well, I'm just telling, we're just reporting. But the gentleman who owns it is, I think, ready to move on.
Oh, yes, he is.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he's ready to move on. He says he's gonna fix it once it gets done. Okay. 104 Johnson Street.
On 104 Johnson, there's actually nothing new to report since last month.
Is that David French?
Yes.
Mhm.
Bottom
Yeah.
So, and then 715 East Front Street, that is one of the, that is a property that was reviewed by the PDBN work group this past meeting. And once it was reviewed, it was decided that, the administrator should begin the process for demolition by neglect and send an official
Letter.
courtesy letter to the owners to inform them, which is the very first step.
So you did find the owner?
Oh, no, this is,
the address of the owner.
this is on Front
This
Street.
is the one on Front Street.
This is East Front Street, this is
Yeah,
not Pollock
This is not
Street.
Pollock Street, this is not 726.
I'm thinking Johnson Street. I thought you were talking about the little house that's all torn up that has no chimney.
Right, that one's Ms. McDevitt.
Yeah.
Okay.
We always knew who that was.
Yeah. Okay, other items and updates, anyone?
So the little house right next door to Jesse's house that they elevated and had finished the porch. What's going on with that?
So, other updates. So, I have been, or had been having some discussions with him to get it moving along, as well as to help him find the appropriate siding to replace the pieces that were removed, because he has asbestos siding. I did help him find a very thin concrete siding that has the same dimensions as the asbestos. So I think he's acquired those, and I also talked to him on site about the rest of the project, and I have seen him directing some workers on site in the past, but I mean, I only go out around there only so often. But so I haven't seen anything, not that it hasn't happened, I haven't seen anything in the past
His mom's
4 or
gone,
5 months.
right? Is it just the son now? It was a mom.
Oh, I haven't
So
heard
you're
of the
saying
mom.
him, so it must just be
Right.
the son now. The mom was in the house.
So at one point he did, and this is earlier on, he had some issues with coordinating the landing for his steps down at the bottom where it meets the sidewalk, and also drainage out of his walls out onto the sidewalk. So I talked to him a little bit about that, but that was a coordination thing that he had to do with the public works people, I guess. And I had suggested that he at least fill in those spaces and maybe get some grass growing or something. But he also has caps that have to go on some of, the last course is always a concrete cap.
Was he not going to do some terracing landscaping when he first came to see us a couple of years ago?
Right.
That's
But
what
he
was trying to
pretty
do.
much, I think, gave up on that, so it's, as you see now. The steps go up, and then there's a landing, a long landing, which allows access to the yards that will be there. And then from there is another set of steps up to the final doorway, the stoop at the doorway. So,
I believe, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, that landscaping was sort of part of the COA.
It was. It was.
So I was getting ready to say, if he's not following the COA, then we need to follow up now.
yeah, no, what he's built is what the COA
The
has.
But the landscaping
It
was
doesn't
part.
have any landscaping.
I know he was supposed to put landscaping in, I thought.
Well, he will, yeah,
It's
but he doesn't even have
all
dirt yet, so.
So landscaping wasn't part of the COA.
I thought it was.
He just hasn't gotten to the part where somebody comes and puts in dirt and.
Right.
Has
Okay.
he asked for an extension?
No, he
Is the
started.
COA good for a year?
It's
Yeah.
good forever once you start.
It's forever once she starts.
Maybe that's something else that needs to be looked at,
Yep.
because that protects them from everything forever.
So it can just sit
Well-
there from now to.
Well, so that's where, going back one to 715 East Front Street, that also had 2 COAs in fact, and in one sense, it could be considered that it's still under construction,
It's a good
but
job for.
it's been a year since we issued that COA.
Yeah, but it's not been done.
Well, we had to stop them from doing what they were doing. They did do some work once they got the COA, and then it stopped after that. So is it,
The house.
how long can a project be under construction?
Seems like it's forever.
And so now PDBN work group said, well, that's long enough. we're gonna now do this as demolition by neglect because there has been absolutely no activity.
But again, that becomes, at least to me, and I'm glad you're here, maybe you can enlighten us.
I'll do my best.
It just seems as though our position would be completely indefensible if COAs are good forever as long as something began.
It's
Because
my-
even if they did nothing for 5 years and we take them to court because of demolition by neglect, we're going to lose because the judge is going to say, you issued a COA.
It's my recollection, and I was actually trying to pull it up while you were speaking, that the code reads that an applicant shall comply with the COA within 1 year of its issuance unless there's an extension. What comply means in that context has been interpreted to say begin. And it may be that we can have a different interpretation of that word. So that's one issue. As far as prolonged construction projects, let's label it that way, demolition by neglect is only one of the tools in the tool belt to deal with that particular circumstance. So obviously, you know, it could be certain criteria, demolition by neglect may be an option. Also, outside of the HPC, if there is a residence that's in a state of disrepair that doesn't meet the minimum building code, then there's also resources on the inspection side. So if the goal is to have safe, habitable houses within the district in the larger city of New Bern, it may be that this board collaborates with other city resources to accomplish its aims.
Is that the same as minimum housing?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So we could go either way.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and, I mean,
Wait,
they,
you can just hold on, I have one more one. So when you read those words, comply, so we could define what we think comply
You cannot.
is. Huh?
This commission cannot make that decision unilaterally. That's a conversation that I would like to explore with the city senior council. There may be case law and other resources across the state that may bolster a position about one interpretation over the other.
And could you do that?
I'd be happy
And
to.
report back to us?
I'd be happy to.
And we would love to hear what you have to say, and then we can make whatever decisions we can make with your information.
I'd be
And we
happy
are
to.
so glad you're here.
I
Please go ahead.
have two questions now. I'm wondering, do we have the ability to invite an applicant or someone whose application we've approved to come back before us and discuss their progress? Do we have that authority?
You have the authority to invite them. If they decline the invitation, you do not have subpoena power.
Okay.
By statute, a historic preservation commission can, but the Board of Aldermen in the city of New Bern did not give that power to this particular commission.
Okay.
And what would be our next option if they did not come back? Like we had the man come back about the fence, and he came and discussed it with us. So if he had refused to come back, what would be our next option?
Well, a violation, I want to make sure I understand your question. So there was some confusion about the fence. Was a COA issued?
Yes.
COA was issued
Well,
with particular specifications.
Right.
Did he build the fence to those specifications?
That
we don't think so,
part of the
no.
debate.
No, we don't
Okay.
think so.
Let's say he did. If he did not,
No.
or not him, but if an applicant failed to comply with their COA, that can be prosecuted, for lack of a better term, as a violation of the ordinance.
Okay. All right.
That's my best answer in this moment.
We will take your answer, ma'am. Thank you so much. Okay, so let us then go to our other item, which had to do with the man in the fence, and which Joe has brought up tonight, and that is, do we want to define from whence place a fence is going to be measured, so that we do not have to go through that again?
Yes.
Because it is very clear, although he doesn't seem to think it's very clear, that he built a berm up and did the fence from the berm. That, I mean, and that's why when you saw in the pictures, whether you call it a rendition or not, that was what was in the proposal. So do we, as a commission, want to identify what we want the level of the fence to be from which it is going to be measured, from 4 foot to the 6 foot.
Well, I think we have to define that, and we may have to define varying conditions for location, because it depends on for example, the house next door to me is about 4 feet higher in the back of the property than my property. Any fence that they put up, if you looked at it from my property, even if it was only a 4-foot fence, but they could go 6, but from my property, it would be too tall. From their property, it meets the guideline. So that's a complete confusion, but they're not violating the intent of the guideline. They're really not. Because they're building it from their ground level.
So in that sense, we may have to say, because of that condition, you can only build it this tall.
Well, we could write a guideline or a standard that says, you know, from the view from where? From all sides, from one side? Because that is a complicating factor, but it's important, okay? My bias would be that we also need to address the difference between the commercial zone versus the residential zoned areas, because there are different conditions for construction and for the appearance of things in those two locations. If you go down Middle Street, between, you know, the 200 block of Middle Street, that has a completely different atmosphere because buildings are literally connected than if you went onto any other residential street. So where you would put a fence and how that would be measured would be very different than how you would measure one in front of somebody's house on Johnson Street. You know, and that difference should be reflected. You know, and it doesn't matter, to me, in truth, it doesn't matter to me what those differences are or what the final guideline would state. It only matters to me that it's clear, it's defensible, and it's enforced consistently. That's the only thing that matters. So if we want to say that you can put up a 10-foot brick wall in their backyard, because many places in Charleston, for example, have very tall brick walls in their backyards, and it's lovely because it creates these private areas. Well, we can't do that. And do we want to continue in that vein? Maybe we do. And that would be okay. But we need to state that, and we need to state where that is okay. And right now, we don't. Right now, it says 4 feet, 6 feet. And it doesn't give us any further information about how we determine that.
And wasn't in the last discussion that we had, you discussed about leaving the word berm out of the guideline, just saying 4 feet from the sidewalk?
Part of it for me, because I don't want to revisit the application, the issue is the property was altered in order to facilitate what they finally did.
Okay,
So if someone does that, then we need to have a guideline that says, well, you can't alter your property in order to get around the guideline.
Okay, so can we put this on, we only have one agenda so far at the next design review meeting?
Right, but we can get a new item the day of.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying, we don't have 8 or 9 like we could have. Can we put this on the agenda for us, for everyone to give some thought to this? And we've talked about this many, many, many times, and about, we will probably need you to help us craft the language that will pass.
Council's too smart for that.
That will pass the courts. You will have to help us do that. And so if everybody can put your thinking caps on for...
Jeff Ruggieri has volunteered to do it too.
Are you doing something to help us?
But Jeff will just tell us what.
You are?
Textual design.
He is drawing a picture of something.
This is charades.
It's bigger than a bread box.
So we can agree on that, right?
From the bottom of the fence to the top of the fence.
We okay with that? All right. So then the next thing you got, let's say it's a sidewalk,
Okay.
and let's say this end is 6 inches higher than this end. So the next thing you gotta decide is whether you want all fences to be level, or all fences to run with the land, or both.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, thank God we don't live in the hills. right?
Yeah, well, we got some hills.
I mean, because you could have a tree root.
So, and this is just, don't answer these questions right now. These are the things that
We've got to think
we
about it.
need to decide next meeting for some.
All right, well,
All right, so,
speak on these.
so think, this is standing in the street looking left to right,
Okay.
you know, essentially. So you've also got standing in the street looking to the back of the lot, right? And it's going to be like that every time.
Mhm.
So the water drains to the street and not in the backyards, except for in our historic district where the water drains to the backyards.
Yes.
We know who
Once
those
in a
neighbors
while,
are.
right.
So you got the same problem east, west, north, south, so to speak. And the same issue of whether you want your fence to be level, or to step, or to run with the land, or that, how much you want to get into it. So, I guess the last thing I can think of that Dr. Joe's already talked about is our fence there. And this is the property line. And so in one yard, you measure from this side, and it meets that criteria, but if you measure from this side, it does not.
Say that sentence again,
If this is the property line,
right?
and this fence meets this criteria, we agree this is okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
When you measure it from this side of the fence,
Oh, you didn't pull up to that side, okay,
yeah,
now,
it's one dimension. When you
okay.
measure from over here, it's another.
Which can also be
Are
the
you,
sidewalk.
ma'am, are you getting all this? Because you got to help us craft this
I'm
verbiage.
soaking it all in.
Good, good. We
Yeah,
have lots,
yeah.
lots of variables.
And you have, if you think about it, at the back of my lot on New Street
Mhm.
is precisely that thing where the church is built up on their side by a good 18 inches, so that all their water,
Drain
Well,
in
but
your yard.
the other point that I think Matthew just mentioned, which I think is a really good point, is that you have this kind of a circumstance where you have differences in property elevations, but you also have the possibility then of, for example, any property that puts up a brick wall and then wants to put a fence on top of the brick wall.
Mhm.
Now, are we going to include the brick wall, or are we only going to
We have
address
had
the
this
fence?
discussion before.
I mean, that has to be one of the other circumstances.
Well, in my mind, it comes down to that
Well,
diagram
it
again.
does, because like in my property, between my house and the next door neighbor's house,
Yeah, take a good
we
picture.
have a brick wall. And at the very front of the brick wall, it's level with the sidewalk. And then it tapers up to the back, and it keeps going up until it gets to the highest point in my backyard where that brick wall is 4 feet. And then it tapers back down again, because the property runs back down again. But it's level on top of the brick wall. His fence starts at the level point on his yard, but effectively, it's the top of the brick wall. So that means, that on his side, he's 6 feet, and he's allowed 6 feet. On my side, there's a couple of places where it's 10 feet from my yard.
Mhm.
Now, is he violating the guideline? I don't think he is, because he didn't create the
The terrain.
disparity between the level of his yard and mine.
Mhm.
But that, see, that gets to that other issue.
Well, but how is it 10 feet on your side if it's only?
My yard is lower.
Just by
Because if we-
the, just by the
If we look at
terrain.
the street, it would run down this way,
Mhm.
well, almost in a tiered fashion to the river,
Yeah.
which is why my basement flooded and his didn't
Mhm.
during Florence. Okay? But,
So these are all things we've got to
but those are
really
important
consider.
issues. And how do we look at that?
Yeah, these are all things that we have got to somehow put on a piece of
You know,
paper.
and if we look at, for example, the house on East Front Street that isn't finished yet, well, that's all retaining wall. Is that person allowed to put a decorative fence on top of the retaining wall?
Oh, my
Mhm.
God. Oh, Lord.
Yeah,
That's
the one
right.
On Broad and George.
Oh, Lord.
I'm talking about the one on East Front Street.
Oh, okay,
You know
yeah.
about the
I
one
see what-
down by
The
red
Jenga house, gotcha. You're
Yeah.
right.
So what are these other three things
All
that
right.
you have given
So-
us to think about?
Last thing I'm gonna drop for you.
Okay.
We all
We
know,
may fire you if you keep going.
I just,
You're
you're
gonna
gonna have
make
to
a
lay it out there, because
I will make a
this is what
decision.
we're asking to resolve in some short, simple guidelines.
Okay.
I know, so tell us what it is.
So the
We've got
last
to-
thing is, we've all experienced the frustration of explaining to an applicant what their design flood elevation is
Yes,
in the
Mhm.
flood zone,
yeah,
because essentially mean sea level
Yeah,
is zero.
main sea level,
Grade is some other number,
grade.
and top of fence in this case,
Top of
or
fence.
design flood elevation is another number, and nobody can ever tell you how high they are above grade. Yeah, I mean, they have trouble understanding. So essentially, to deal with this problem, you're talking about
Grade.
mathematics like that an applicant's going to have to perform, and we're going to have to review.
Okay.
And
Not necessarily the mean sea level part, but at least,
The grade.
you know, these two.
those two, yeah. 'Cause we
before
know-
you leave that trip, if they can add a little berm, and we get back to what Joe said, do we allow people who come into a property that's too low to fill it into a level area?
Well, if it's part of the application, absolutely.
And the reason I ask that is because years ago it happened where I live, apparently, and my poor neighbor, her lot is that much lower because of the fill
Right.
that went in. And she floods consistently.
Right.
And he doesn't.
Well, when I spoke with planning and zoning about my water problem in my backyard and told them what I wanted to do, which was to put in a sump pump and run it out, you know, pump the water out of my backyard. They said, well, you can do that, but you can't trench under the sidewalk. You can't connect to the storm drain. So what you have to do is you have to pour the water onto the sidewalk. And I said, you know, in January, occasionally we get a freezing day, which means I'm going to be killing people because there's going to be frozen water on, you know, and they didn't have much of a response to that. I said, how about I just raise the level of my backyard and dump the water into my neighbor's yard? They said, well, you can do that, but it wouldn't be nice.
They
Oh
said
my
you
God.
can do
Yes.
that?
Yes, that's totally allowed.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we have some
So-
interesting rules.
Might be a civil.
So there can be a little berm.
happens all the time.
So Peggy, I think what you're asking is,
Exactly.
you know, if somebody wants to build a berm, in addition to the fact the filling, fortunately, there's nothing left to fill anymore,
Yeah.
within reason. There are very few lots. There are a few along the river I can think of, and the few lots downtown where everything, instead of draining from the backyard to the street, there, we've got some inverted places downtown, and that's just the way it is. So the ponding thing isn't as much of an issue. Dr. Joe's partially correct in my opinion on, you know, where you can move water. But it is somewhat non-law abiding, meaning other legislation that's not necessarily zoning ordinance or HVC related, to increase, you gotta say this right, but you can't change somebody else's drainage
Right.
pattern drastically. In other words, you have to keep your property boundaries today at the same height they are.
The city did that with Riverwalk. They let them build that whole
Yeah.
thing up, so it dumped into the.
Well, I mean, you can build it all up, and you can, but you've got to slope it back down on your property to be at the same place it was when you started. You know, the same result there.
Yeah.
The water, you change the drainage pattern.
Yeah.
But, so there's some subtleties there, and probably some legalese that's, would affect things. But What I really think you're getting at is, you've mentioned a couple of times about language about berms and things like that. I don't know that we need that. In my opinion, you could certainly build a berm as long as it was in the application and it got approved in the COA. You know, and those berms might be different heights, you know, I mean, a berm could be 3 inches for a raised planting bed, or there might be a situation where it's something, you know, taller, but that, I kind of see it as that's our responsibility to determine what that berm looks like as part of the landscape.
What that does to the height of the lawn. Okay, so thank you very much, and you've given us many things to think about. And we will have this as an item on our next meeting. And being that there are no other items at this time, can I have a motion for us to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.